Hello and welcome to our leadership series hosted by the Office of Student Involvement. Today's leadership topic is going to be conflict resolution within your student organization. I'm Lauren Hill, the Director of Student Involvement. Let's get started. Let's first start off by defining what actually is considered a conflict. So the definition of a conflict is a disagreement or clash between ideas, ideals, principles, or people. The importance then of conflict resolution comes in to help promote a positive work environment, enhance team collaboration, as well as improve productivity and morale. Now that we've defined what conflict is, let's go ahead and look at the different types of conflicts. The first is that of interpersonal conflict. This is going to be between two individuals. For example, they might be team members, or in the case of our student organizations, it might be two executive officers, or even just two general members, or one officer and a general member. But again, this is two individuals having a conflict. The next is an intrapersonal conflict. This will be an individual having a conflict within themselves. For example, your personal values might be in confliction with something that you're doing or what your job demands of you. This is going to be a kind of inner turmoil you're feeling. The third type of conflict is going to be a group conflict. This could be, for example, between maybe two large subgroups of a student organization, departments within an office. Again, we're looking at a multiple group of people, so about 5 or 6 people, let's say, in difference to another 5 or 6 people. And last but not least, we have organizational conflict. This is where an entire organization, such as your entire organization, your entire student organization, has an issue with policy or practices that are being done. Now that we know the types of conflict as well as who conflict can occur between, let's look at the common causes of conflict. So what is actually making us have a conflict? What's causing us to have an issue between our organization members, etc.? The 4 main common causes are going to include miscommunication, a differing of values, resource scarcity, or personality clashes. So first off, miscommunications, of course, are going to occur when we're maybe not, fully expressing ourselves, allowing for other individuals to fully express themselves, and so that disallows for an ability for us to come to a common ground. So that miscommunication is basically causing us to have issues, and we're not understanding our peers very well. Next, differing values. You may have a different core belief than other individuals within your student organization, and that difference in values can lead to you to have conflict. I think the best way to help yourselves here when you have differing values is to communicate properly and make sure that you're doing so properly so it doesn't further escalate back into miscommunication. Resource scarcity. Just like we all take in economics courses and we learn about resource scarcity there with real life resources, this can also happen within your student organization. Think maybe we're feeling some conflict because we don't have enough funds to do all the events we want to do this semester. So, we're starting to butt heads about we want to do, this social event and not another social event on campus, or we're wanting to do it at one event space and not the other, and we can't do both, and now we're having, an issue there. That's due to resource scarcity such as funding. Last but not least are personality clashes. A great way to think of this is in terms of working styles or approaches. Very common, you'll think of type A versus type B here. And this very much so leads back into miscommunication because we're not meeting people where they're at. We're not learning as much as we can about one another to help each other work better with one another. How then within our student organization can we work to resolve conflict? Well, there's a few different kind of resolution styles we suggest here in the Office of Student Involvement. First, there's always, of course, avoidance. Remove yourself from the situation. Avoid, working with that individual or that group. But here's the deal, y'all. I don't suggest that in the long term. It's going to make things get heavy. It's going to pile up issues. So this maybe helps when it's a short-term solution, but definitely not long-term. Next would be accommodating. So helping to think again, like we mentioned, when looking at the different types of conflict, miscommunication, difference in values, really look to try and first prioritize others' needs over your own. Just like we said before, try to meet people where they are, understand where they're coming from. That's accommodating. Up next is then competing. And so instead of, just only doing what another individual suggests to do, maybe start pursuing your own goals at others' expenses. And that sounds pretty harsh. It is. And so I don't suggest this regularly, but it is something to think of where if you're waiting for someone to help you accomplish something and they're just not meeting you at the table, maybe it's time to go ahead and make that accomplishment on your own. My favorite two resolution styles, though, are going to be compromising and collaborating. I think it's always important to try and find a middle ground where both parties can work together and maybe meet each other by giving up something that's compromising. And then, of course, moving forward and collaborating, working together, seeing what works best from each of your two styles and putting that together to collaborate and find a resolution. How now can we work through a conflict? What is a good conflict resolution process? We have here in the Office of Student Involvement a 5-step process that we think works very well within student organizations. The first step is going to be to identify your source of conflict. Let's gather information and understand our differing perspectives, see what is causing the root of the conflict. Step 2, let's of course now look at openly communicating. Again, as we've mentioned on previous slides, really and truly where we might be coming from a different perspective or have different core values, that usually escalates into not communicating very well with one another. So step 2 is to open up communication, ensure that we're encouraging dialogue, and we are also actively listening to one another. Step 3, once we've identified and once we're communicating and talking about our issues, let's go ahead and start looking at options. Let's look at collaborating together, let's look at coming to a common ground, and let's go ahead and start looking at solutions together and jointly. Step 4, let's agree on a solution. Once we've each put in a little bit of information and come to a common ground, let's agree on a solution and move forward. And last but not least, step 5, let's follow up on this. Always, always, always check in with one another. Something that worked in the past might not work in the future. Solutions are always going to need to be tweaked in the future to help ensure that we don't have a future conflict. We've spoken a lot today about how important communication is. Here are a few effective communication techniques for you to utilize within your student organization. First, the technique of active listening. Active listening is where you're ensuring that you are constantly listening to another individual and you're not already building up in your head how you're going to respond. This way you can ensure that you're showing empathy and understanding to your peers. Also, it's important to try using I statements when talking about your feelings. For example, I feel like blank when you do blank. This way you can express your own feelings without blaming another individual. It's taking ownership of your feelings. Next, we always want you to try and maintain a calm demeanor. It's best to always manage your emotions and stay composed so we can be professional and concise and continue to have open dialogue. Coming at someone out of anger and aggression is never going to be effective. It can be used as a scare tactic. It's also just not a way that you want to carry yourself, really and truly. So this is a great technique to go ahead and start practicing now within your student organization, and that'll serve you for years to come as a young professional. Last but not least, always try to ask open-ended questions. This will allow for you to encourage discussion within your student organization and have an opportunity for deeper understanding. You don't want to always just ask questions that have a response of yes or no. Always try to help individuals express themselves. It'll help you in the long run as a student leader and student member. How can the role of a leader work within conflict resolution? As a leader within your student organization, whether that's because you're an executive member of your student org or just because you are a leader just socially. The best things that you can do when it comes to conflict is model good behavior. Just demonstrate constructive conflict resolution practices like what we've been talking about today. Always try to encourage your team to be engaged in any kind of conflict resolution. Make it a group effort. And also to ensure that you're providing support to other members who might be, facing some kind of conflict, whether it be personal, interpersonal, or with a group. Let's now review a few examples of some conflicts, and let's go over some potential conflict resolution processes. For example, Sophie and Lisa have been close friends for years, but recently they've been experiencing frequent misunderstandings and conflicts. This has resulted in a strained relationship, with both of them feeling hurt and distant from one another. So step 1, let's first suggest some individual self-reflection. Let's encourage Sophie and Lisa to both personally reflect on their emotions, how they've been reacting during this time of conflict, and their own personal contributions to the conflict itself. Let's help these ladies develop some self-awareness to better understand their own individual perspectives. After we've helped these two ladies to, interpersonally review and look into how they've been affected and how they maybe have been affecting this conflict, let's also help to now facilitate some open dialogue between the two of them. Let's create a safe space that is also non-judgmental for Sophie and Lisa to openly express their feelings and concerns to one another. Let's also ensure that we're actively encouraging them to both actively listen to one another and show empathy during this conversation to one another. Step 3, let's help Sophie and Lisa find some common ground. Let's bring them back to some potential shared values and interests that they can have with one another again, and that can help serve as a foundation for rebuilding their friendship. Let's also again emphasize the importance of mutual respect and understanding for one another. Another great way that we can help these two friends is in step 4, which is to address any misunderstandings. Let's assist Sophie and Lisa in clarifying any misunderstandings that might have occurred during their conflict and what also might have contributed to their conflict. Maybe there was just a misunderstanding in how something was communicated. So let's encourage them to seek clarification from one another rather than just making assumptions. In step 5, let's work on practicing effective communication. Let's teach Sophie and Lisa effective communication skills. So again, really using those I statements, being assertive with how they feel, but also ensuring too that we're actively listening to one another to ensure that they're expressing their needs and concerns constructively. Now that we've helped these ladies get all of their feelings out in the open, we have stopped making assumptions about how one another feels about things, we're being open, honest, and communicative with one another. Let's now move on to our next step, which is going to be rebuilding trust. Let's help guide Sophie and Lisa in rebuilding their trust with one another by setting clear expectations and boundaries in their friendship. Let's encourage them to take small steps towards rebuilding that friendship while also respecting their boundaries because, again, we all grow, we all change throughout life, so let's respect and honor that with one another. In our last and final step, let's help each of these ladies commit to growth. Let's encourage Lisa and Sophie to commit to encouraging one another for personal growth and ongoing open communication. Let's help them to develop strategies for conflict resolution in case anything ever comes up in the future and maintain their healthy relationship moving forward. And now I'm sure you're saying, hey, that's a lot of steps. What are some tips to help my student leaders within my organization, such as other executive members or other kind of interpersonal conflicts? What can I do to help make sure we hit all of those steps? Well, here's a few tips. Always try to stay neutral. Don't take sides. Maintain trust of both or all parties involved. Also, don't simmer on things. Let's always try to address a conflict early. Let's nip it in the bud, for lack of a better term, you guys. And last but not least, team building is always something to encourage throughout the year, not just when there's a conflict or after a conflict. This ensures that you're promoting strong relationships among your team members throughout the year and throughout time. In conclusion, let's just review a few key takeaways from today's training. Always understand that when working in a team, conflict is something that will naturally occur. We're all human. We're all going to have misunderstandings. It's something to work through and forward from. Also, effective resolutions lead to stronger relationships in the long run as well, too. Not always agreeing is a good thing. And last but not least, leaders play a critical role in the guiding process. If you are a student leader within your organization, know that that is a hefty responsibility to help lead your teammates, as well as fellow executive officers and general members through any kind of conflict. Have any questions about today's training? Feel free to reach out to the Office of Student Involvement at studentorgs@ttu.edu. Want to take a peek at any of our research? Please see our citations here. Thank you again for attending this training. We hope this was helpful for you in a potential conflict resolution within your student organization. If you ever need us, feel free to email us at studentorgs@ttu.edu.